It's the Rule Breaker Investing Podcast with Motley Fool co-founder David Gardner.
Welcome back to Rule Breaker Investing. Well, I want to tell a brief story about my guest this week on Rule Breaker Investing. It's when Benton and I first got to meet each other. I was at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, speaking at something called the Wilberforce Conference, which is an annual conference in Chapel Hill. And I was talking about finance. And Benton came up to me afterwards and he said, "Hey, I love finance. I've heard of the Motley Fool. I sometimes access your site. I love this topic. In fact, you went on to say, I blog every week. Pretty comprehensively, you read what's happening in the world of finance. Then you go on to list your favorites and then provide your viewpoints. And you've done that religiously every single week." And I went back later and checked your blog. I was like, what a thoughtful guy. I mean, what a smart guy. And I said at the time, I feel like I recognize you, Benton. I don't know what it is, but I feel like, and you said, well, maybe it's because we're both Moorhead Keynes scholars at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, a scholarship program that we were both in. And we might have met at one of those reunions or get-togethers. And I thought, oh, maybe that's it. And then I paused a sec, and Benton, I think you're 25? 25? He was there with his lovely wife, Morgan, and we were all talking. I just said, you know, what do you do though? And Benton said, well, I'm a professional baseball pitcher. And I said, you're what? Because in my mind, you're a blogger and an excellent one, blogging finance on the internet. But yeah, I went back and checked Benton's stats. He said he just finished a successful AA season in American baseball at Montgomery, Alabama. And I looked up your ERA was 2.75, I think, over 100 innings as a starter.
Thereabout, yep.
Thereabout. And that's a pretty great season for a 25-year-old. So it turns out this very engaged, accomplished financial blogger is also a pitcher. And I thought, you know, you got to come visit us at Fool HQ. This is a really long windup. I want to welcome Benton in a sec, but I have to mention what just happened at Fool HQ, because not only did Benton raise his hand and said, sure, I'll come visit. We'll come visit and let's do the podcast. But I said, you know, would you come and bring your mitt and a ball? Could we set up something inside our corporate offices here at the Fool where you could just, because I've always wanted to face a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, would you just throw for us? And we had about 26 Fools sign up to stand in on Benton's heat. Now, I would say you're not bringing your full heat.
Waivers were signed. And as I stated before we began the podcast, I've never been so nervous to throw a bullpen. So I'm glad everyone was able to walk out with all limbs attached and no bumps or bruises. And I got some work in today. So thanks for hosting a good bullpen session.
You're welcome.
That was great.
That was unique. And something that a lot of us will remember for a long time here at the Fool. So thank you, Benton. So I want to talk about baseball. I want to talk about finance and maybe life, the interstitials in between. But let me start off by asking you a question. Since I haven't seen you in 3 months, this is a question that Ralph Waldo Emerson would often ask people he hadn't seen for a few months. It's this simple question. It's a lovely question. It's, what has become clearer to you since last we met?
And that's a great question. I will shoot back to you based on your talk at the conference when you mentioned Steven Pinker's book, right? And so I ended up, you know, you had an ad about Audible, ended up downloading the book on Audible. It's a long read, I think maybe 19 hours, something of the effect, right? Went through it and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think regardless of your spiritual, your metaphysical beliefs, it's a book that really underscores how or the positive direction that the world is moving in because of, you know, free market capitalism and innovation and where the human trajectory is headed. And so something that's become more clear to me is how excited I am for the future, really. So thank you for the great book recommendation, really.
You're welcome. And we both thank Steven Pinker, who was on this podcast, I think, in this very space about a year ago, right here in Fool HQ. And I think what you and I probably both appreciated about that work, Benton, is that Steven he said, you know, the greatest antidote against pessimism and a pessimistic worldview is just to count, right? And it's all about the data that he puts out in his book, Enlightenment Now, where it's just page after page looking at Pew Research and this or that tech trend or population trends and just saying, look what's happening. It really is pretty remarkable. So
yeah, I should have mentioned Enlightenment Now, but so that's the book title that you mentioned at the conference.
Yes.
That I listened to it and blogged a little bit about it, and great book though. So
yes.
that theme is sort of what has become more clear to me since we last saw each other.
That's wonderful. Let's start early in your life. You grew up in and around Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Am I right about that?
Correct.
What was life?
About 20 minutes north of Rocky Mount.
Tarboro?
No, that's
where you were born.
East. That is where I was born. I was raised on a farm. It's technically Enfield, North Carolina. Enfield, but it's E-N. Yes, no pun intended. E-N.
E-N, Enfield. I got it. Yep.
But went to school and practically sort of had our lives in Rocky Mount, though.
So what was life like for you as a kid?
Very free. I really have to give a lot of credit to my parents for just loving me and kind of letting me pursue passions. And they really encouraged me a lot. I loved just how my parents were able to kind of pick me up. I had, everybody experiences failure along the way in an athletic career, in school, in whatever. And they just really picked me up and encouraged me through that, just to do my best and to keep striving, keep putting one foot in front of the other.
And at what age, Benton, maybe two early moments for you, can you look back to and you say, that's where my love of baseball started? And then a different moment, that's where my love of finance or business started?
Very easy to answer. So the first one for baseball, it was the very first day I had practice. And my dad took me out there. It's t-ball practice. I think it was 4 or 5. And I told my dad, I want to play pitcher. They don't pitch. You just stand there. You're a fifth infielder,
t-ball,
right?
You stand beside the ball on top of it.
Well, no, they've taught the coach underhands it, and then you stand next to them.
But you're not pitching. That's the coach.
But I'm fielding, right? So I'm the pitcher. And first practice, he throws me a towering pop fly with what he thought was, just a normal ball. It was a hard ball. It was a typical baseball instead of a t-ball, like a softball. And, of course, like any 5-year-old who has never learned how to catch, I put my hand up like this, and I think I'm going to catch it, and it hits me right in the nose. Bloody nose. He thought I broke my nose, and he said, I caught Ashley, my mom. He said, he'll never play again. I've ruined his career in baseball.
Oh my gosh.
And I looked at him and I said, that hurt, but I still want to play pitcher. And I told my dad when I was really young, hey, I want to pitch in the big leagues. I never knew if it would be possible. It still may not be possible. It's hard to get there. But I do love baseball. It's been a fun ride. Mm-hmm. And then for finance, I was unlucky, I guess you would say, to really be taking note as in 2008 and 9 as the markets really tanked. My dad had just gotten into I would say more of like a kind of one of those trading programs, and we gotten interested in it together. I was probably 15, 16, and I started observing what was going on, just kind of the prices, and I kind of took a little bit of a different approach, and I said, okay, who are the richest people in the world? Let me see if I can learn a thing or two from them, like if they've written anything or if there are books about them. And
it's generally not the guys selling the trading programs. Is that a fair generalization?
Where are the customers' yachts, right? And as my wife would probably say, and her dad, minor obsession with Warren Buffett and his writing. And so that's when I began the long-term value investing education of just going through his letters. I learned about, other investors that sort of subscribe to a similar longer-term value investing philosophy. And that's kind of how it took off. And even from then, I knew that I wanted to study finance at Carolina. We're surrounded by a bunch of fools who love finance. So, hey, we're all family here. But, man, I was a finance nerd starting at probably 15 or 16. I really engaged with it. I loved it. I still am. So I do that off the field. Some people like to play, guitar or whatever. I like to read finance. So,
although I think you're pretty good with the guitar too, as I understand it.
I'm okay. With the
acoustic guitar.
Acoustic. I'm okay. Yeah. I'm okay.
Yeah. So I'm curious what your dad was thinking as he watched you kind of transform into, as you're saying, a value investor. Like, was he cool with that? Was he proud of that? Was he changed by that? Would he have predicted that would be true of you?
I think we had some good discussions. And I would say my dad is most certainly a value investor. I think a lot of people, both him and I, got into that side of it from the trading side, getting interested in hey, the market's going hyperbolic up right now. So typically in the later stages of the markets, right, you start to see the salesmen say, hey, look how easy this is, and look how much you can do. You can see this in a real estate cycle as well, right? The gurus, hey, let me sell you this on this program. And so we started to kind of, as we saw the market dip and through the cycle, we started kind of understanding this is how the market cycles, these are how they work, and how can we learn from this, right? So the truth of it is, I don't know if we could have ever seen that. No, who saw 2008, 2009 coming? A select few. Didn't. Yeah, you certainly did.
In retrospect, no, I did not. In retrospect, we all do, but very few did at the time.
At the time, right?
As The Big Short and others have made.
Everyone loves to claim it, right? Yeah. But in reality, investing can be a lot of in hindsight. It's 2020 through the rear view, right? So.
Do you feel marked by that at formative age 15, the Great Recession, 2008-9? Are your grandkids 60 years from now going to go, yeah, you grew up during the Great Recession?
I think fortunate for me, as we talked a little bit about Rocky Mount, is a very steady Eddie town, right? And so we didn't have as much of the boom and bust as some of the bigger cities around the country did. Real estate prices didn't really boom, and they didn't have to bust. And same thing with kind of the economic activity, right? But as I observed the prices of markets and such, and kind of the valuations of the day, I mean, I'm almost 26, and I haven't seen really a full cycle, because I kind of started, I guess you could say, at the middle or the top of the cycle, but I mean, we haven't seen another. It's been only almost 10 years, right? Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't say excited, but I'm sort of excited to go through a full cycle and really experience those emotions, if that makes sense.
It sure does make sense. It's part of life.
Yeah.
Because if we all lead the good, long lives that we hope to, we're going to have a bunch of those happen. And I don't think we should be ever over-marked by any one of them. It is that resilience that I think is a great part of investing, and the character building that it does for people like Warren Buffett. We're going to get to financial blogging in a little while, but let's stick with baseball a little bit more. I'm going to try to embarrass you once or twice with quotes from head coach Mike Fox, who's the estimable longtime championship coach at the University of North Carolina. And so a couple things that Mike said about you. He said, Benton's a relentless worker. He's an unbelievable competitor, which some people might not expect. Now, the reason I want to share that quote is I'm not clear why they would not expect that. What is Mike Fox looking at you and seeing when he's saying you wouldn't actually expect that Benton is an unbelievable competitor?
I think my competitive side is kind of silent or very quiet, right? But if you get a ping pong table in here, or I saw a chess set upstairs, and I know you're a big board game fan, you'll see what I mean. Uh-huh. And Morgan, my wife, is laughing at me right now because she knows sometimes she has to slap me a little bit and say, get off chess, come on, right? So I've become obsessed with chess. It's another way to really flex the competitive muscles. I really do have a deep competitive streak, and I try and rein it in a little bit. Thankfully, there weren't competitive at-bats today from the employees, or else it might have gotten a little nastier. Yeah.
Well, it is one of our core values here at the Motley Fool. So, I mean, we celebrate. Of course, anything can be taken too far or not taken far enough, but it sounds like you're hitting the golden mean of competitive pretty well. Let me go on with one more quote from Coach Fox. He said, and this was when I think you were like a sophomore at Carolina at this point. This is like 5 years ago. But he said, I'm a little bit in awe of the young man. I can't even fathom being his age and doing the things he does with his accomplishments, from community service to athletes in action, to his grades, to his personal life, to music. You wonder if he sleeps at all. End quote.
I sleep a little bit more than I did in college. I'll tell you that. Yeah.
So I guess because I know part of how I think about you, Benton, what I appreciate about you is that you're trying to operate at a top level across multiple different contexts. And I'm sure being a top level family man is one of them and maybe most important to you. But how about a few tips on personal productivity, or how do you manage to blog every single week excellently on the internet about finance and be pitching every 4 or 5 days and try to be great at both?
It's a great question, right? I think another thing that I'm learning, and I'm young and dumb in a lot of ways. One thing that I feel like I'm learning is that focus is very important. And it's a great quote, but I'm learning that I need to focus on just less and less things to do them at a higher and higher level, right? So for me, and you mentioned wanting to be, a family man and also having your job and your work and what you're passionate about. And so, we only have 24 hours in a day. So for me right now, baseball, is, in terms of just career, is what I'm focused on, but you can't train 24 hours a day. I love to read and I love to explore financial topics. And so I find the time to sort of fit it around that. Blogging is a very flexible thing. You probably better than most know that, being at the Motley Fool. And so it fit sort of very perfectly and easily around sort of the schedule of baseball, because my workday doesn't start until about 2 or 3 p.m. And I get done, call it 11 p.m. and I come home and spend some time with Morgan. And then I get up in the morning and we'll have our nice breakfast and coffee and hang out, spend some quality time. We'll, eventually we'll read or relax, and you even have a lot of downtime at the field where you're, potentially you could be lifting or maybe you're taking that day off, but you still have to be at the field. It's not like you can just come in and then leave and then come back for the game. So once you're there, you're there. So there's a lot of downtime that you can sort of fit in those interests that you have, and reading for me fits in perfectly. It's not like I can bring an acoustic guitar to the field. I don't know the manager would appreciate that. So it does fit well around baseball, but I am trying to actively get better at saying no. Like Warren Buffett is extreme. He keeps an open schedule. And I think that's what makes him really great, is that he focuses. And I think that's very important with trying to do even a couple things really high level, is just focus. And also focusing on family time and quality time is very, very important. And, that is an investment that's so much more important, just relationships, so much more important than any amount of money or job or career that you could ever have, in relationships. And so just focusing, I would say, is something that I'm learning to do a lot better.
Excellent. I'm sure it's something that each of us can improve at. I know I can. Part of it for you, Benton, is that you are talented and you can pick up things and be good at them, whether it's chess or a guitar or finance or baseball. And so focus becomes even more important when you're multi-talented, a problem that many of us like me don't have. So, so since 2015, you've been a professional pitcher. After 3-4 years now, what's been your experience of professional sports, the people that you meet? What's the life like? Often minor league baseball is portrayed as somewhere between a dystopia or just a hard dream. What parts of that are true? What's the life?
It's been an incredible ride, and it is a grind. If you want to do it the right way, you definitely have to train all off season. You have to, there are a lot of things that you have to say no to, and including, maybe a really vibrant social life or what have you. And so I think that, interacting with a job with the minor leagues is just probably different than like a normal, 9-to-5 job. I mean, my day doesn't start until 3 p.m. Right?
Yeah, it's definitely different from 9-to-5 job.
And people are wondering why I sleep until 9:30 or 10. Well, it's because I had a high intensity workout last night for 2.5 hours where I threw a ball as hard as I could, right, for 110 pitches. So, try that on for size and see how many days it takes you to, get unsore, right? So I would say another thing that I've really enjoyed are the people and places that we've met. I've kept in touch with a lot of the people that, not on my team, but I mean like off the field. So like some host families, people that I've stayed with, just people that I've met in the cities that we've been located and places that we've gone, a lot of places that I may or may not have ever gone to. I've played in literally every state from Vermont all the way down to Florida over to Arizona. And I haven't counted, but I mean, it's probably a good third of the United States, the eastern side. So have played in California. So we're working on going to all 50 states.
Wow. It sounds, I sure hope it happens, because it probably means you're just succeeding even more. You're seeing parts of our country many of us don't see. A lot of us grow up in a town and don't necessarily get too far out of that town. Or we like the city and not the country. We like the country, not the city. Have you developed any kind of view of your fellow Americans based on just having been to all the different states and talked to all the different people at still a young age?
It's been incredible to see just the differences in cultures, right? From the north to the south to sort of the Midwest out in Arizona, the West Coast. And yet we've met incredibly nice Americans everywhere we've gone. We have what we call our second family in several of the states that we keep in touch with. I mean, like on a monthly basis, right? So I think the cultures may be different, but there are nice people to be found everywhere, right?
So I think that you said earlier that you've been clocked as high as 96 miles an hour. Sounds like it takes a lot of work just to do that. That's not a natural born thing. Am I right about that? If you're having a 2.5 hour workout where you're throwing the ball as hard as you can? That's
true. That's true. I think that, you may think that 96 is pretty darn hard, but it's about the average fastball out of the bullpen these days. So I'm on the slower end of the side. I got to be honest.
Unbelievable to think that. I can't believe that. I know at least among Full HQ, I believe you're the fastest arm in Full HQ today by about 20 miles an hour.
You should, maybe try 96 out on the highway. Just, see if it's fast enough for you.
I actually have, and that's one of my many failings.
Did you get caught?
Yeah, I'm not that fast, but I have double-digit speeding tickets. That's the only double-digit radar that I hit on speeding tickets. So what are your prospects, just briefly playing forward the next season? You had a successful season at the Southern League in AA baseball. Is AAA, I believe it's the Durham Bulls, which is the Tampa Bay Rays organization you're in. Is that kind of what you're shooting for here?
Definitely shooting for that. The Rays are very, very fortunate to be in a position where they have a lot of starting pitching from AA to the big leagues. So fortunate for them. It's going to be competitive for me, right? But the Rays are a very, very young and very strong organization, and I think they have a very bright future. I hope that I can be a part of it. So definitely shooting for AAA, and obviously that's the next stop, and then the ultimate goal being the big leagues. So, and
are you going to make it?
I think every kid that gets drafted and signs a contract has to say yes. And I do believe that I can pitch in the big leagues. I think it has to be the right time, the right place, the right organization.
I believe that you will, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, David.
You are obviously a player. I know that you spend some time in the administrative offices of at least one major league team. So I'm just curious, as we start to shift to business and finance, your perspective on baseball as a business.
Yeah, I'm hopeful for baseball that it is going to continue to grow. I mean, it's America's pastime. I have read that, in-person attendances are sort of moderating, but TV revenues are better than ever. So I think there will be some interesting trends with my age, millennials, maybe coming out as more of a social event, but keeping in touch on the TV sort of more regularly. So that'll be kind of something interesting that I'll be watching kind of from the business side of it. I think it's a sport that's really poised for family growth. It's just a great family environment. You can take your kids out there, for just call it $80 and hot dog beer and have a great time, family friendly environment. Hopefully not too many bench clearing brawls, although, if that's hey, free MMA fighting, that's fine too.
I mean, as a kid, I definitely always cheered on any bench clearing brawl that might happen. And my brother Tom's in the audience today, and he and I know that's kind of what you want, is turn just into a professional wrestling match. But no.
It's a great sport. It's a family sport, and I think they're doing a lot of initiatives to try and keep the game rolling, speed the game up a little bit, and keep fans engaged, right? So I think I'm positive on the overarching sort of macro trends on baseball. I think that it's headed in the right direction.
So Ben, back to you for a sec. I'm pretty sure you tended to be near the top of your class at each level of schooling. So I'm pretty sure within the minor league baseball grand contingent of hundreds of players, you're probably among the brightest of the players, and you have a great eye for finance and business. What is your view of like your peers, your fellow 25-year-olds, in terms of financial literacy, financial understanding? If you could make one wish for your fellow players on your team, if they hear this podcast, what's one thing they should be doing in their financial lives? Yeah,
and I'll be sure to share this with a lot of them that I have a good relationship with, because I like to tell them all the time, hey, in the minor leagues, you've got a lot of things taken care of for you for those 5 months, right? Take that signing bonus that you got, invest it. Because in the long term, if you can make it through, that will be worth it. And so putting it into the stock market for the long term, maybe investing in some real estate, but something that's going to be as Warren Buffett always likes to say, something that's going to be a productive asset for the long term.
Yeah. And so a lot of guys maybe get, like, let's say $150,000 signing bonus. Not a bad thing for somebody who, had a dream in high school and all of a sudden is getting a six-figure check. But maybe a one-off, a one-shot, a signing bonus. So what percentage of your peers, in your estimation, make a good decision with that? And then what percent buy a car or live on it, which I guess is not necessarily a bad decision if that's what they have to do.
Right. Yeah, I think it depends on where they got drafted, how much they signed for, where they came from, family background. And so it just depends on a number of factors. But like I said, going back to your earlier question, I always tell guys, if possible, because I don't know their background.
Everybody's different.
I don't know where they're coming from. I don't know their proclivities to risk or, the ups and downs in the market. I just tell them, hey, if it were me and you could live off of what you get, right? Take that signing bonus and invest it. You will be glad you did in 10 to 20 years. Like there's no doubt about that. But again, I don't know their backstory, where they're coming from.
Do you feel like they listen to you?
I think maybe more and more they're realizing how much of a fool and a nerd I am. So maybe a little bit more and more. When I first started, there were some guys looking at me like I had 6 eyes. I'm like, man, you're in baseball. What are you talking about? Stocks?
I mean, I got to imagine on every team you've been on, you have like the reputation as the Buffett guy.
More like the nerd, but I'm working on that. So
Benton, you're blogging. You started, I think it's like blog number 48. So is that almost a year of weekly blogs?
Almost a year, yes. So I sort of had this idea. Again, this comes shamelessly cloned from a Buffett phrase known as the Circle of Competence. So that's, again, the Circle of Competence. What are you good at? What do you know? And what I know was baseball and not much else. So I decided, well, I like finance a lot. I like to read a lot. Why don't I just start sharing some links that I think are interesting? When I feel like maybe I have a good grasp on something, I'll just start writing some thoughts down. And just in the, 48 episode or issues that I've done, I've just noticed when you write things down and set a schedule for yourself to express those thoughts, how much better and more comfortable you feel doing that, and how much quicker you can actually do that. So it's been a fun process. I think it helps you sharpen your thinking, sharpen your writing skills, your communication skills, and it keeps me accountable to read more. So I love it. It's been a lot of fun.
We really do write in order to learn. Now, the name of your blog is Circle of Competence. I believe the URL is circleofcompetence.co.
CO, that's right.
Yeah. Did somebody get circleofcompetence.com? Some internet squatter.
Yeah. I'm still working on it, but
circleofcompetence.co, and really thoughtful look at what's happening in the world of finance, and makes me wonder, Ben, like, what are you reading? What do you keep up with? How do you find the stories and headlines that you want to comment on each week?
Deal Book, New York Times, Pitch Book. I have one on Sunday, a few on Sundays actually, that I really like. The Exponential View is more of a techie one. exponentialview.co. And so I said, well, he's doing .co, so I can do .co. He has, he has thousands and thousands of subscribers, and I have, maybe 100 and some. So subscribe, please.
Yeah. Well, but I hope you get a few more this week.
Let's see. What else? Benedict Evans is a good tech one. I mean, there are a lot of these type newsletters that I really scroll through for the headlines. I open a bunch of stuff, probably don't get to all of it. But when I really find something that I'm trying to do, again, trying to do a better job of, when I find something that I think has a really impactful message or a thesis behind it that I think you can learn a nugget and sort of build off of that, I'll try and share it.
And do you write multiple drafts? Do you just throw down stream of consciousness? How do you make that blog happen on a weekly basis? We have a lot of people listening who blog or probably would like to.
I think a lot of it starts with a seed of an idea that I've either had, and I'll write it down, and then I'll come back to it. And then it starts to sort of sprout like a stream of consciousness. The one that I just wrote, I wrote a small post on Masayoshi Son and the Vision Fund. And that's something that I've been really interested in. I mean, it's incredible how he raised $100 billion to deploy into venture-backed companies.
Changes the whole metrics of the industry and valuations of lots of things around the world.
Lots of things, yes. And so there are a lot of knock-on effects from that. And to me, it does seem a bit of a sign of the times almost. How could you raise $100 billion in 2009, 10, 11, 12? I don't know that it would have been very, very, even possible, right? Mm-hmm. You're seeing a lot of these private equity firms that are raising $15 to $20 billion in dry powder. And so a lot of money out there seeking, what deals, right?
Yeah.
But that just kind of came to me as a trend that I was noticing, crop up and up and up and keep, coming up. And so I really wanted to kind of hone in on that. And this was kind of an organic process. When I notice something and I really like a trend, I'm like, well, that's interesting. Let's explore that. So I try and do something a little bit different, different industry or a different concept or topic.
Yep.
Each week.
And I know you're interested in real estate as well, talking about different interests, and you're invested in real estate.
I am, yes.
What about, since we like to talk more about stocks maybe than anything on Rule Breaker Investing, what are some of the favorite companies or interesting companies that you're looking at right now? Yeah,
so just to get back to some of those big asset managers, I own some shares in a company called Brookfield Asset Management. And I really jive with Bruce Flatt, who's the CEO, his investing philosophy. He gave a great talk, which I have to be honest, I had been studying their company, but then he gave this great talk at Google. Bruce Flatt, just Google it, talk at Google. Yep. Bruce Flatt, CEO of Brookfield Asset Management, on his value investing philosophy and how they're trying to build their business. I mean, it's like the greatest primer on their business ever. And I was like, I'm in. This is a great business. And they just raised a $15 billion fund. So they've got a lot of dry powder, and they've been in the business in alternative assets of renewables, real estate, infrastructure. And so kind of those alternative spaces. And now they're managing funds for, so they have leverage on leverage. And they're growing their assets under management at a really big clip, and their fees from the assets, at like a 20 to 30% clip. So, they're not exactly cheap, but I think they're a solid company, well-positioned. So,
and that's the stock you own directly?
Brookfield Asset Management, yeah.
Love hearing that people own stocks directly. Often it's not cool to do anymore. It seems the cool kids are all signed in and just indexing. But of course, we think it's cooler to buy great companies directly.
I agree.
Do you remember what the first stock is that you bought?
I thought you might ask this. And so I actually had gone back and looked at this. The first two stocks that I bought were Apple and Google.
Pretty awesome. And you've just held them ever since?
No. Talk about a first-rate education. Really, right? And so I made a quick profit on the Apple, what I would call a trade, not an investment.
Do you remember roughly where you bought it and how long you held it and when you sold it?
No, this was probably 10 plus years ago. And at the time, I had opened up like my dad opened it up on my behalf. I was, paper trading. Then I said, well, Dad, I've been following these two stocks. Like, I want to buy them. And at that time, it was more like, Dad, can I buy some options on the stocks? And he was like, well, just, trade the stocks first, kind of understand them, their business, and then maybe we can go into the options, right? So I made a little profit on Apple. I think it, maybe 25, 30%, whatever, over a 6-month, year-long period. And great, fantastic, good.
I mean, it shows you had really good instincts for company selection.
Man, I wish I would have held on to it, right? Famous last words. So,
but has that been instructive for you as an investor?
Very. And that's one thing that I was talking to Morgan and my father-in-law about this, Steve. I love you guys' philosophy on that of, we're not looking at the next quarter. We're not looking at the next year. We're looking at the big trend and holding this hopefully forever. This is a company that we want to buy in and partner with for the long term, right? So when you go and look at your track record and you look at the Netflixes, the Disneys, right? And made up 200 times your money, or 180 or whatever it was. I mean, that's awesome. That's the kind of investor that I want to be. That was not the kind of investor I was, right? So when you start out, a lot of people come in through the trading side. Oh, the money's easy. I can just, bam, bam, I can buy a call option and it'll go up 5% and I make 100% on my money. And I said, yeah, it's really that easy. If it was that easy, everyone would be doing it, right? And so I think that the education that I got early on was buy and hold good companies, right?
And we're going to open it up for questions in just a minute. So I know there are going to be a couple out there. Maybe just one more question for you for now, Benton. And that is, because I know you read widely, you think about the future, which is, by the way, all that really matters, because every investment record we're talking about is something that's already happened. Any number or any stock move, it's all about what happens next that matters. So looking ahead, what are a couple of trends or focal points for you that excite you and that listeners would do well to pay attention to?
Automation's one that I've really honed in on. And I'm a big fan of technology and automation. I think it improves quality of life. It takes people out of less sort of robotic, more menial kinds of stuff. Menial type jobs. And I think in the short term, there may be some pain associated with that. There's a great study out from a professor over at, I think, Oxford, who did some work on this. But I think long term, it'll create more jobs. It'll move us into a technologically faster society. But there's going to be some real winners and losers from that. And also, potentially on the labor side. Obviously, I mean, the elephant in the room is retail, with Amazon. Although I did read a great article this past week that I'll be sharing about the death of retail, not as much an Amazon effect, but maybe a social media effect, that people don't really care as much about how they dress, but how they look in their social media, which is really interesting. I had never thought about that. Because you can look good from TJ Maxx for the same price as you can from Saks Fifth Avenue, right? In an Instagram post. Anyways, just a kind of a hot take on that.
Thank you. All right, questions.
The Motley Fool's been interested in esports lately. As a professional athlete in real sports, what's your take on the rise of video games, basically?
That is a fantastic, and actually that's another trend I should have said. I honestly need to go back to my blog to look at because I have like these industries that I kind of tag things under. Esports is a huge opportunity. Huge opportunity. I feel like you're looking at me like you've called some of these big companies.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah, so, I mean,
preach to the choir.
Yeah, you have.
But I think a lot of the world still doesn't get it. They're like, why would you watch people play video games?
And I'm not a huge gamer, right? But when I really started to pick up on it was this past season when I used to ask all my friends, hey, like, what are y'all doing? You guys want to go grab something to eat? No, man, we got we're getting on Fortnite tonight. Sorry. Right. And, which by the way, I think it's, who makes that? Epic, right?
Yes. It's Epic Mega Games.
Another good company, Tencent Holdings. Mm-hmm. They own a big chunk of Epic, I believe. So they're I think they're a Chinese company. I own a couple shares of them. Yep. Esports, I think is going to be huge. I read an article a few months ago about how the championships of some game I've never heard of nor played, again, I'm not a big gamer, but I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity there, drew more viewership than like the last 2 or 3 Super Bowls combined. I mean, it's incredible the amount of eyeballs they have on that. And Twitch, I think, who bought Twitch? Google or Amazon?
Amazon bought Twitch.
And at the time, they paid an astronomical price of
it was like $1 billion,
right? And that looks like pocket change now. So I think they were obviously very ahead of the curve there. Yeah. But at the time, it looked extremely pricey as an acquisition. So I think it's going to be a massive opportunity. I have no future in it because I'm terrible at any video game. But when I can find some good companies that I think are really going to outperform, yeah, I want to get my hands on some shares. So we should talk after the show.
You talked about being really competitive. Have you ever lost your cool on the field and taken a swing at someone, or have someone take a swing at you? I know I think the pitchers usually are in there, right?
Love the cage match question. We have to have one every Rule Breaker Investing week.
The first part of the question of have you ever lost your cool? If you just stopped there, I could have said yes, but then you said and so taking a swing, no. Nor have I ever had anyone take a swing at me. I can't say that I'm mad about that. But yes, if you play a sport long enough, or even esports, there will be a time that you get mad and lose your cool. I try not to do it in front of everyone. It has happened.
I have 7 questions. The first is not a question. It's just to let you know that Apple 10 years ago, by the way, I did not own the stock either. When you were trading it, we were reflecting that we didn't know exactly what the return has been since, but it's been a 10-bagger. So 25% return is great for 6 months, but it's a great learning lesson. We've all learned it. I learned it with Dell Computer before you were born. So what's one thing that you would change about the game of baseball to make it even more enjoyable for the fans?
I would, man, we could write an entire book on this. I would say just more fan engagement, and I think that starts with the players. And look, I'm not going to say that I'm perfect about this, because when you've had a long day and those fans are waiting out there, they want you to sign something or they want you to just take a picture, right? I would say that, starting with me, we should do a good job of engaging the fans and building relationships and encouraging them to sort of build that personal connection. I think that's very, very important. And then they have done some rules, starting in the minor leagues to speed the game up. So they've actually put like a shot clock or a pitch clock up there. I kind of work fast already, but for some guys that's been good. So
it's like 20 seconds, isn't that what it is?
I think it's 15.
15 seconds.
Right.
15 seconds in between pitches. Pitch. Spend a little time, pitch again.
Yeah. So you're gonna, you get the ball back, you get your sign, and if you're not in your windup or in the set position about to throw, as the clock runs out, as a pitcher, you get a ball. If the batter's not in the box, with 2 feet in the box, ready to hit, they get a strike. So and I've seen batters actually strike out on this. They were not very happy, and that definitely cost us more time than it was worth. So I guess it nets out. But the effect of, hey, I need to get the ball and I need to go, right?
How has Moneyball affected the way you pitch, how you are evaluated as a pitcher, and are there any sort of advanced statistics that you use in evaluating yourself that maybe we haven't heard of yet?
So not necessarily me evaluating myself. I'd have to defer to sort of the higher ups in the Rays, but I do know that they're very, very, very much into these analytics, as we talked about earlier today. They have these advanced statistics like the BABIP, the batting average on bases, or batting average of balls in play, and then they have sort of the second derivative of that. They have so many ways they can slice and dice this data, and now they're starting to get data on the way your ball moves, sort of the on hitters, the angle of your bat, the approach of your approach angle to the ball, the trajectory that is coming off of your bat, the speed at which it's coming off. Is it a ground ball? Is it a line drive? Is it a pop fly? What's the percentage? They can slice and dice everything now, down to the nth degree. So there is a big trend, not only in baseball, but in a lot of sports, in how can these analytics make us better as a team and in player development. So I'm not on that side. So I get that experience and I get the feel that that's what's going on and I understand that's what's going on. They don't obviously share a lot of that with me, except for the player development side of, hey, we think this can make you better. And we could sit and talk a long time about how that's changed the face of baseball and other sports. So
one more baseball question for you, Benton. And that's just that I've noticed as a fan of the last few years that pitchers and how they're being used at the major league level anyway seems to be changing. The idea of a starting pitcher, that's blurring. It's disappearing some. And now it's about starting a reliever or every pitcher just coming in and throwing a couple innings every few days. Do you think that trend's going to continue? What is your view as a traditional starting pitcher yourself?
And I believe that trend originated with the Rays the past
your
year.
Organization.
Exactly, right. And so we actually did some of that down in AA. I believe they did it throughout the organization, but more so as you sort of moved up the ladder. And to the best of my knowledge, the way to explain it, I guess, and the way it was explained to me, that the statistics, on paper shows that it would be better to sort of bring your closer in fresh to face the very top of the lineup.
The best hitters, right? So your closer
Guaranteed. With the nastiest stuff to come in, face those guys, sit down the 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 3 and 4 batters if one of them gets a hit or walks or whatever. Then have your starter come in and go 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, so that when they roll the lineup over for, let's call it the third time, they're facing the top hitters only for the second time.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so they can get deeper into the game without having to face the top of the lineup a third time.
So do you think it's going to persist? And what's your how psyched are you about that as a pitcher?
Well, I think there will always be a role for, I don't want to call them starters, but pitchers that will go longer and pitchers that will come in and go 3 innings or less, right? And whether you call them a starter or a longer reliever or a second starter, they called the closer an opener this year when you come in and open the game. Not a starter, but an opener. Opener to the starter, right? I think as teams see how the statistics bear out, and how that takes place, more and more people will either write it off or it will turn into a trend. But 1 year, it's not, I don't think it's enough sort of across time data.
You're not being managed that way at AA or maybe at AAA this year.
No, I came in probably 3 or 4 times after an opener. Yeah, maybe even more than that in AA.
You did?
Yeah, so I have experienced that. Yeah, it's it's a little bit different. Yeah. Some guys like it, some guys don't. I don't really mind, but it's just a different take on trying to maximize your team and what you have based on what the statistics say. So.
All right, last question for you, Benton. Would you like to come work for the Motley Fool when you retire from professional baseball? I guarantee you a job.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you got that in your back pocket, plan, B or maybe even Z for you, but you got that plan. And thank you very much for joining us this week on Rule Breaker Investing. It's a delight to meet somebody so young, so accomplished, so intellectually curious, and concerned for the future of all of us. Thank you, Benton Moss.
Thank you so much, David. Thanks for having me.
That's great.
As always, people on this program may have interest in the stocks they talk about, and the Motley Fool may have formal recommendations for or against. So don't buy or sell stocks based solely on what you hear. Learn more about Rule Breaker Investing at rbi.fool.com.